And we're live, guys. Welcome to the show. It is the Pro Wrestling Rewind, show 32. And of course, if you're listening to this on Phoenix 92.5 FM, welcome. But you should be listening to this live every Tuesday at 6 p.m. over on Nerd to Know Media and YouTube, Twitch, all that good stuff. Not on Mixer because Mixer's gone and Dave is still sad about it.
So, we don't know where we're supposed to go and watch our guy, man.
Exactly.
Where are we supposed to see him?
Exactly. But this week we have a special guest. So Dave, do the honors and introduce our guest of the week.
Oh, absolutely. This week, I'm so excited that he's our first guest as well. A long-time co-host with me back on the Teacher's Lounge, many a year ago. Mr. V over here. How have you been doing?
I've been doing well. Quarantined.
Yeah, quarantine.
Yeah, it's fun.
And by the way, it's a great day for wrestling, everybody. Welcome back to the only show hosted by people that don't hate wrestling. It's fantastic.
It is fantastic. And I tell you, after last week's show where we had very unkind words to say about the current product, it was nice to go back and look at a pay-per-view from a time where wrestling was fun and still fun, but it's definitely of its time. And for anyone who doesn't know what we're talking about, within the first couple of minutes of watching King of the Ring 1998, you see the best sign in the history of the world, which is super fun. But yeah, like I have to say, from top to bottom, this show was interesting. I did want to quantify the statement of the greatest lie ever told, which you'll get into, of the Hell in a Cell match.
I don't know. I might be starting to disagree with you. I'm curious when we get to that point.
Yeah, like it's we'll see what's up, but definitely rewatching the show, I'm glad we did, because there was a lot of the stuff that I forgot, and other stuff that I remembered, because I actually, first time I saw this pay-per-view, I rented it. I rented the VHS, so I didn't actually see this live. I think I saw it a year or two out from when it was, when it was on. But V, this was in your neck of the woods. So what was it like for someone who actually was older then and actually able to experience this in the area?
Yeah, Darragh's calling you old. How do you feel about that?
I was 8. I was 8, so I'm assuming you're older than 8.
You were both 8.
I was 17 when that happened. I was 17 years old, so I'm 39 right now. I just remember it was just nostalgia. It was the Monday Night Wars. It was WWF versus WCW, and it was kind of like starting to become the turning point of this.
Yeah.
And this pay-per-view kind of started like a little bit of a closing of the gap before Mick Foley eventually won his title, and then the WWF took it. But this happened in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It's about 30 minutes from where I live, 25, 30 minutes. They called it Civic Arena then. If for your listeners, it's the home of the NHL's Pittsburgh Penguins, or was. And it always
You're welcome, Ireland, for the hockey reference.
But it was just, we were just so excited because it was Undertaker, Mankind, and one thing that not many people remember, Mankind was kind of like a favorite around here. He was trained around this area.
Yeah.
By Dominic DeNucci. Actually, if it was at Freedom, Pennsylvania, that's about 15 minutes from where I live, and about all this. So it's like right in my neck of the woods here. And we were excited. We were pumped. It's the Attitude Era, everything was getting hot. Everything was getting hot then.
Deep into the Attitude Era. So 1998 was like,
we're in the trenches at this time.
It's weird though, because the background is interesting in this because it kind of got lost. Like a lot of this stuff got overshadowed by what happened on the card.
Yeah.
So yeah, like it's interesting to kind of go back and try to put yourself in. That's the good thing about the network. You can kind of look at the Raw beforehand, and like it's weird because all the feuds, like it didn't make sense. Like when I was watching this card, like the show was great up until the last 2 matches, and then it kind of fell apart because it didn't really make sense. Do you guys think the Undertaker versus Mankind was justified in a Hell in a Cell? Do you think that should have been a title match?
That's interesting because I've always been an ardent supporter of the fact that the title match should always go on last. But then you watch this pay-per-view and you watch what they had planned, and then things that weren't planned that happened. But the things even that they did had planned should have put it at the top of the card just for safety's sake. Like, what if they had to like end the show early because something had happened? I mean, we would learn a year later that the show would go on no matter what. But I mean, it's an odd placement on the card. But how could you have it anyplace else than Hell in a Cell?
Well,
I mean, it's defined the genre.
Well, what I mean is, it's like, because it's weird actually in the whole, because the commentary was great, but with the context it was even more interesting when you go back. So like the main feud here wasn't really Mankind versus The Undertaker. It was like Mankind versus Stone Cold. Sorry, The Undertaker versus Stone Cold Steve Austin with Mankind and Kane as the proxy.
Yeah, that's exactly what I kind of sort of remember.
But it's weird that like Austin and Undertaker never didn't have that match, or that, you know, they didn't just drop the belt to the Undertaker and then let him have the blow off of Mankind, because they kill each other in this match for no reason. That's like the biggest problem with it. I found
it's for the fans, man. It's for the fans. Foley got what, his contract because he jumped off his roof onto some mattresses. Like, come on now. This had to happen at some point.
Yeah, but what I mean is, like, the story that, and we've talked about this several times, on a defining feature of Russo's WWF is that all the whole card told a story, right? So
yes,
everything kind of tied into each other. And the first part of the card, like, really did. Like, it was really, really enjoyable. From the very beginning, it all kind of... And it helped that it was King of the Ring as well, so, you know, had a natural through line. But once the Undertaker Mankind stuff happened, it kind of swapped and became its own little show. So the last, 40 minutes of the show is its own separate thing. I just feel it's very disconnected from the rest of the show for some reason. Did you guys get that?
Well, I got a question for you on that point. I mean, we always talk about how it's the greatest lie ever told and blah, blah, blah. This was only a minute longer than the actual main event itself. Like, we act like nothing happened for 10 minutes at a time. But when I was watching it, that was my preconceived notion when we had talked about it a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
And when I went back and watched it this time, I realized, wow, they actually were doing things the entire time. Like, that was drama, emotion, and very impactful. There was no lulls.
There was very, very big lulls at certain points. The first big drop when Foley went off the top of the cage, there was like a lot of laying around for like 10 minutes.
But with the medics and the referees and Terry Funk coming down, like, it filled those lulls. Plus, also, what do you expect? Like, they kept me entertained when I could have turned it off and gone, well, he's dead. Okay, let's move on.
Well, like, it's something that you wouldn't see nowadays. Let's put it that way, because you know you'd want to move from spot to spot to spot. This was a very kind of like the way the WWE, and the reason why I say it's the greatest lie ever told is because the way the WWE present it is not the way it was, and I know that's the way history is in general, but WWE present it as like it was this epic match that ended with Mick Foley going off the top of the cage. It's like, no, that's literally not. That's the opposite of what happened.
I see that. I see your point.
You.
I see your point now about that.
I mean, you're wrong, but I get you.
Well,
all I remember is God.
Sorry, no, like, it's just that's the way they present it. They present it as being this epic encounter. And look, the match itself got really good after Foley went through the top of the cage and he had a bit of a match. But it's just like when you watch it through the lens of WWE, it's completely different to the way it actually was. That's the way.
How about the lens of somebody who was 17 at the time?
Yeah. What do you think? Yeah, what do you think about it?
Like I said, it was the Attitude Era. And we were all excited because we thought this was all part of the show. And when we were to see, whether it be on TV or in the audience, Mick Foley or Mankind falling off the cage, I mean, we thought that's part of the act. And then we thought, okay, this is part of it. This isn't staged or anything like that. This is exciting because we never really saw that before. Like, you watch the current product, you'll see people flying off of 20-foot ladders, but we really never saw someone fly off a 16-foot cage, land perfectly on their back onto an expansion announce table. And it was a dull moment. It was a lull moment because You're getting everything checked out. You see the Undertaker getting drastically up while he's still in the cage. They raised it up. I think it was just for the thing, and you could see it's like, wait, what's going on here? And we thought this was still part of the show, and we were like, is this over? And all of a sudden, Mick comes back out, goes back to the top, and that's when it was, from what my friend's perspective, and from what my perspective when I was watching it, was the biggest pop in that match was when they both came back up to the cage.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's when it kind of,
because we're like, they're going round 2, and then when he got chokeslammed through, we couldn't believe what we saw, because we thought, was this going on? And Mankind was not in this match after that. Whatever he was doing was just sheer guts.
He had a decent match.
This match should have been over after the choke slam.
Yeah.
But man, what a spectacle! It really, to me, elevated this character of Mick Foley, and it was just. And then you see the second part of the show, like you mentioned, the main event with Kane and Austin, and Mankind coming back out and just doing something, and we'll probably talk about that later. But what a zany part of the card after the match took place.
Yeah, the fact that Mankind was able to run in on the next match was absolutely insane. Actually, I don't know how that happened.
There's a couple of things about it that was weird, and stuff you wouldn't see nowadays. It's just like China is all over the card for some reason. Like, it's like she's just hanging out, and she's like, "Go on, you go." And then Mick Foley's just hanging around. It's like, okay, this is really weird. Like, the whole show felt like it was. What was great about it was it felt like it was anything could happen. Like, literally anything could happen, and you kind of got that feel. It was a lot more fun. This event as a whole, but like the Hell in a Cell match, I don't know. I respect it for what they did. There's been much better matches after it, but I don't know. I'm still just kind of like going back and watching it, but I think it's solely because of what WWE do, where they like fully just pump it down and they build it up as this awesome match, and then you're watching it, you're like, yeah, it's alright. You know, it's just like, I wish they didn't do that. You know,
here's one thing I really. I'll let you go, V.
I totally get Darragh's point. When I went back to my old vintage note taking, if you can see that.
Good Lord.
It's 2 pages.
Oh, fair. There's so many notes. I have my notes here on my screen because there's so much on the show.
I thought, from a memory perspective, everyone remembers what happened with Mick Foley when he fell down twice.
Yeah.
But not many people remember what happened after the aftermath, if you're just a casual wrestling fan.
The thumbtacks.
And like I said, I gave it 2 different grades.
I have, guys, just that
much. for like the wrestling itself, I was like, it was average to a little above average, just because of the way Mick kind of like was absolutely insane, continuing on. But from a memory standpoint, it's one of the most memorable matches I've ever encountered, despite the fact it was in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And despite that, like, people have seen this that I recollect, and from what I watched. I mean, like, to me, it's like matches that I remember, you know, WrestleMania 3, Savage and Steamboat, and then some of the obscure ones, and somewhere in that memory bank, I'll always remember that Hell in a Cell between Mankind.
But my question would be,
yeah,
if it wasn't for those big spots, would you remember it?
If it was just, to be honest, I probably wouldn't. It would just be
straw man argument. What are you doing?
It's not a straw man argument. It's literally that was it. And here's the thing: Vince actually didn't want those spots to happen. Now, to be fair, to chokeslam through the cage, that wasn't supposed to happen. They were supposed to bounce back up. That wasn't planned. But the actual initial throwing them off, yeah, obviously that was planned and scripted. But like, it's funny that the one spot that everybody remembers it's basically a match of one spot, which it shouldn't be, because I actually quite enjoyed the match after the spots.
Yeah.
And what kind of bugs me is that people only remember for this one moment, and it's like, you probably shouldn't, you know. But look, it is what it is.
Hey, what bothered me is the fact that the Smash announce table didn't have enough courtesy to remove those really hard TV monitors off their table.
Yeah.
He did look. I was watching that, and the poor Spanish announcer was like, "Oh my god, it actually happened!" And he's like this in the corner. So it's like I didn't even think he was ready for it. You know, it happens very quick compared to like, you know, when we saw Shane go off it with the Undertaker, where he had a bit of time to kind of go. This was like literally off you go. And again, like I don't think they thought. It's very sudden. Which
I mean, if they did, and it could have went wrong in so many levels.
Oh yeah.
I mean, how he landed it, I mean, was the best way you could really land. A little bit, like maybe 3 inches away, his legs would have hit the railing.
Yeah.
Maybe 2 inches to the right, he would have knocked the color commentator out. I mean, I don't know if you saw, like, after he falls down, you see the color commentator, like, look in startled belief and then just flop over.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw that one, but I was like, oh my gosh, this could have ended so bad. But the more I watch it, the more I'm amazed of how, you know, it was landed the best way it could have.
To be fair, like Foley's at this point in his career is probably the only guy who could take that spot.
Yeah.
In the way that he did, because you know, based on what he built his career doing. But you know.
I will say this though, because you want to say that this match had no purpose. You want to say that it took it was out of place.
I didn't say I had no.
I
didn't say I had no purpose.
Here's my point.
Go on.
My point is that because this match was so out there, and just use hand sanitizer.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
It's a habit.
It's just a little contact.
I'm a neat freak.
You got me off on a weird tangent. Anyway, so one of the things that I loved about this is that. And if you're not watching the video version and you're on audio, you don't know what you just missed. So make sure you check out our YouTube channel. But what they were able to do with this was set up for the premise of the main event, which was if Kane loses, he's going to set himself on fire, and they had gas cans all around the ring. Because after everything that happened in Hell in a Cell, my reaction was, oh, maybe they will set him on fire. Clearly everything's on the table tonight.
Yeah.
So I think that they added legitimacy to that being a possibility,
and that's probably why they did it. Like, to be fair, like we laughed and we had some great lols at the, you know, I versus I match last week because it's so absolutely ridiculous. But in this time period, yeah, maybe you know, maybe you know, all right, you know, but yeah, like I would say if you haven't seen the Undertaker versus Mankind Hell in a Cell match, definitely watch it, but try to remove the WWE lens from your vision, and then just take it for what it is. As you said, Dave, there's lots of drama going on with the doctors and Terry Funk coming in and checking on him. But yeah, I just think it suffers from the you know what it suffers from? The exact same thing that the Bret Hart Shawn Michaels Iron Man match suffers from. The exact same thing.
What, Triple H wasn't in it?
Well, that's the reason. That's the reason why it was bad, obviously. I will have to say Triple H didn't wrestle on this show, but he did do color commentary, so I was happy enough.
He did some fantastic sunglasses.
Those sunglasses, it was a night for sunglasses. Everybody wore the worst sunglasses you could possibly imagine. It's like they must have had a box of them. It's like, out you go.
I just couldn't believe, like, you look at how he was talking at the announce table in 1998. Hard to believe 22 years later, he's running pretty much number 2 in command in the WWE right now.
Mm. Oh, yeah.
Some of those things I was like, whoa.
But
he's the future.
Well, you know, they should just give him a belt to walk around with. Doesn't he look better with a belt? Just coming out to do color commentary, Dave?
I'm not even I'm social distancing myself away from your points.
From my points. All right, well, let's go back to the beginning, right? So
let's go back.
I love the opening match. It was so much fun, and I wasn't expecting to like any of this. So the headbangers I always kind of liked. Taka Michinoku, great worker. Kai and Tai, I forgot that Kai and Tai was a bigger group, so I was like, oh yeah, all the lads. And he had like a really, really fun little 7-minute match. It was a really nice way to start the show, like with a wrestling match that was actually really good in the Attitude Era. It's crazy.
You know, one of the things that stood out for me about that match is we look at high flying spots today and go, oh wow, those are crazy. I wish people had been doing this 20 years ago. But Taka did some insane, like, no-handed springboard
Yep.
crossbody to the outside. And I was like, wait a minute, they have been doing these moves. It's just there was a period where you weren't allowed to, and we kind of forgot. But
yeah, because
wow.
it was more about the storytelling than the actual in-ring stuff. Comment here from Munster Mutt. I enjoy Dave's commitment to always having a relevant background image.
You're very welcome, Munster. I appreciate it. Thank you.
But okay.
Almost like we plan these shows.
Exactly. Highlight of the night, go guys. Right. So King of the Ring was coming up, right, and obviously that was. I knew Ken Shamrock won, but I was kind of like, oh wait, did The Rock win King of the Ring? No, he didn't win this one. I don't even know if The Rock did win King of the Ring. I don't think he did.
I don't think he won it either.
I couldn't remember who won or not, so I was in suspense for this one.
But Ken Shamrock is, I have to say, I found myself marking really hard for Ken Shamrock because I'm like, he's so good. Like, it's actually horrible to think that they just did nothing with him in the long run, you know. But I was super into it. But he was against Jeff Jarrett, and not like cool Jeff Jarrett, not like Slapnuts Jeff Jarrett. Double J,
the blonde mullet Jeff Jarrett.
No, the mullet wasn't too bad. It's that weird, like
his ring attire. Yeah, his ring attire's like.
It's like, what are you doing? Like, who let you out? Like wearing that, you know? It's like, I don't know. Anyway, so
he wasn't married to Mrs. Angle yet. That was the issue.
That's the issue. So there's a pan coming across the crowd, and we've talked about how much we miss the crowds actually being decent. And there were signs, and there's a sign panning across here, and I swear to God, this is what it says. It's like, you know, Jeff Double J, ain't he gay? And I was eating lunch, and I just, I just started, like, I nearly choked because I was like, this is hilarious. And then I was like, okay, grand, they're not going to acknowledge it on commentary. And then Jerry Lawler's like, wow, here we go. This is they're talking about it, you know. So, what did you guys think of this? Okay, so The Rock never won King of the Ring.
Yeah, Rock never did. I just noticed that. I actually looked on my phone. I'm not going to lie.
No, it's okay. But like, I would have thought that he did, but
I wouldn't know. Yeah, I thought he did because like there's obscure winners like Billy Gunn won it one year or something like that. If I'm not mistaken.
Ken Shamrock won it one year.
Yeah, Ken Shamrock won it this
just
year.
Obscure winners.
I liked by the way that the Jeff Jarrett Ken Shamrock match. It was like your classic at the time of that era. It was like a 7-8 minute match, but it went back and forth. You know, like the good guy or the babyface got his offense in, the heel got his in with a little bit of help from the manager, and what I think we're missing the art of the manager. Whenever I watch we're
missing two things, V. We're missing the fact that the crowds are invested.
Yeah,
like, the crowds hated Double J. Like,
oh, they did. Oh, yeah.
Really hated him enough to obviously make signs that in context are funny, but you know, also out of context, you're like, oh well, you'd be cancelled so fast, you know, nowadays.
Yeah.
But like, again, even not being there, right? King plays such a good heel commentator where he's constantly putting over Double J, and he's you know, giving out to the crowd for making their signs. Like, you're like, oh wow, you actually really don't like Jeff Jarrett because of all these factors. And then, as you said, you have Tennessee Lee there as well, hyping up the crowd, and it's brilliant, you know. I think it's a combination of things, because a manager doesn't really work if they're not given tools to work with, as we saw now, which is why it barely gets over. This was a good combination of things where you had everyone working with each other. It wasn't like, we talked about this, it wasn't like the crowd trying to get themselves over like you'd see at WrestleMania or something like that, you know. But I missed the signs, lads. I missed the old presentation of it. But again, like, as I said, if this was nowadays, Twitter would be freaking out and everyone would be cancelled. So
yeah,
what can you do? Thankfully the WWE Network doesn't censor things, because we would have lost that glorious moment. I definitely
gained some respect for Jeff Jarrett as a wrestler in that time period. I could see how only 4 years later, I guess, is when he started TNA. Well, wait, was that 2004? Whenever it was.
2003. 2002, 2003.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So like 4 or 5 years later, in my mind, Jeff Jarrett was out of his prime. But now, as I look back, I realized, no, he actually kind of was in his prime when he started that company.
Jarrett's prime, I think, was when he was with Owen Hart. 1998, 1999.
Yeah.
That's when he was really starting to get good. And then he went over to WCW and got buried by the NWO. So it's just like, well,
right, but he wasn't like somebody who was 50 years old
No.
and out of shape and couldn't go anymore.
Well, that was the whole-
I'm okay with him winning stuff.
Well,
in
that
TNA.
was the whole reason why Russo pushed him during the whole New Bloods thing, and that was the reason for his push. And I think he gets unfairly tarred with a lot of bad brushes. And again, this is WWE's fault because, you know, obviously the stunt that he allegedly pulled at No Mercy to get more money from Vince, allegedly, he was kind of blackballed until last year, when they finally let him back in.
Yeah, they put him in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
And he was in the Royal Rumble, if I'm not mistaken.
He was, yeah, he was, but he wasn't there. Yeah. He was there as this version of Double J, not the Slapnuts.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Yeah, which, to be fair, that's my favourite version of Jeff Jarrett, actually. I really like that version of him. I think he's great. Ironically, that's the... Yeah. But The Rock versus... Now, here's the thing. The Rock was heavily involved with King of the Ring this year, but it was a case of, you know, always the bridesmaid, never the bride. He had a terrible match with Dan Severn. Absolutely, like, probably the worst match I've ever seen. I'm not going to lie.
There was just nothing. I remember this from 1998. I was like, this is not a good match. I mean, and people were already bashing the Rock for like a limited moveset or something like that, or he was only over because he's a third generation wrestler. But that match did no favors. I mean, but Severn was not good at all.
No, he was in there with Dan Severn. Like, it's weird because this period as well, actually. Do you guys remember WWF Attitude, the game for the PlayStation? So
I remember.
No.
Yeah, I remember having the game, and it took forever to. Was it Attitude? I think, but it took forever to get it because it was supposed to come out in I think June, and then they waited until August because it was Owen Hart's passing.
Yeah,
it took forever to get it up, and then they did these tribute things, and yeah. So thanks for the memory on video game nostalgia there.
Oh no, I remember that coming out distinctively because they gave us a memory card, a WWF memory card. Like, it was pretty sweet.
Cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. But they must have developed the game at this time because it takes about a year to develop a game properly, like maybe more. But it's because all the people who you see on this pay-per-view literally wouldn't be here by the time the game came out. Like, Dan Severn is in the game, Too Much are in the game, Al Snow and Head, they're in the game. Yeah, as literally a head now. And it's just...
I wrestled his head once, and it was just so funny because the voices. And I'm sorry again, but oh man, what a game!
What they should have done is they should have actually had the Head and Shoulders bottle as the flow, and that would have been more fun. But yeah, that's just
a creative way to end that match.
But that's one thing that I noticed. I was like, oh wow, okay, cool. This is, to put it into context, so this was the wrestling zeitgeist of that era. This is what we got, you know. So maybe we'll look at wrestling video games again in the future, Dave, because they are fun.
Yeah, I think we need to see. You play on PC and I play on Xbox. So is there a way to cross-platform 2K19?
Well, if we're talking about old games, there's the magic of for educational.
Emulators?
Well, for educational purposes, not condoning anything, but there are ways of doing it.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, Dan Severn, not good. That's the moral of the story.
That's the moral of the story. But maybe one of our shows we should play a couple matches, or maybe that'll be a special little thing.
I think it'd be a good idea. I think it'd be a good idea to go back and have a look.
Yeah,
do not invite me for that. Do not invite me for that. My time is real limited now.
Yeah, you can pretty
I don't think I can I don't think I can watch a Dan Severn match.
To be fair, I didn't realize there was a Dan Severn match on this. I felt disappointed for all involved. But
no, that tells you how much I forgot. It's like I remember The Rock making it to the finals, but I don't remember who he beat. And then I rewatched it literally yesterday, and I was like, "Oh, he faced Dan Severn. That's right."
But here's who was in the bracket, right? So Vader, The Rock,
Vader was even in this.
Triple H,
like on the show. Yeah.
Owen Hart, Scorpio, D'Lo Brown, Dan Severn, Ken Shamrock, Kamala Mustafa, Mark Henry, Terry Funk, Jeff Jarrett, Farouk, Mark Mero, and Steve Blackman. So the actual bracket was quite good initially. It just kind of got whittled down to some weird matches by the end of it.
Yeah.
You know, but I think a lot of people thought The Rock was going to win, and that was the whole.
I did.
Well, that's why The Rock was that's what Triple H was there, because his whole gimmick was he got beaten by Triple H. Sorry, the Triple H got beaten by The Rock, and
Yeah.
he was obviously putting it over during the finals. But yeah, so let's move on here. Too Much versus Al Snow and Head. So here, right? People
I have
don't.
no comment on this.
So if people don't remember
Oh,
who Too
boy.
Much are, Too Much are too cool before they got a gimmick that worked.
It's
So,
a great way to describe
well,
it.
they were. They were known as Too Much. They were known as Too Sexy. They were known as something. And then Too Cool came along, and obviously the rest is history. But this had Brian Christopher, who is Jerry Lawler's son,
Yes.
and Scott Taylor, right? Against Al Snow and Head. Literally, the head.
A mannequin head, yeah.
A mannequin head. And the gimmick was that if Al Snow wins, he will get a WWE contract. If he loses, he doesn't, right?
Al Snow is the Heath Slater of 1998.
But he's over.
If I can intervene, Al Snow was really over in our area
Oh, yeah.
Wait, Buddy's over.
because
I
it
love
was
that.
ECW. ECW was pretty popular in the Pittsburgh area in 1998. So
Oh,
when
yeah,
they saw
sure.
Al Snow and Head, I mean, you saw the crowd. They had these mannequin heads, like these
But
styrofoam mannequins.
they're directly from ECW, though, because they're the ECW ones.
Exactly.
So, like,
Right.
and there was ECW signs and everything there, so there was that big contingent there. Because for anyone who doesn't know, Al Snow was a WWE guy, but he was sent down to ECW to kind of, you know, I don't know, grow, farm, you know, because that's how why Paul Heyman got all the money, basically, because he was the farm territory without telling anybody. And
We
yeah,
don't talk about that because
well,
supposedly that's not true. ECW was never funded by WWF.
yeah, but that's a lie. Of course it
It is
was.
a lie.
Yeah,
Everybody knows
It's a
it was.
massive
It's
lie.
not the greatest lie ever told, but
No.
it's
No, it's like, yeah, but yeah, so that's why that's where Al Snow was, and he came back up, and this was relatively soon after his call up, wasn't it? I think a couple of months, because he was having this feud with Jerry Lawler. Now, for anyone who doesn't know context, Jerry Lawler hated ECW. That was the whole gimmick as well. So
that was
everything,
a pretty good storyline too, in my opinion.
It was.
I really liked how they.
and they would
Lawler called it extremely crappy wrestling.
and would come back to it many times. Anytime they'd bring it up, he'd always, stick to it. So his whole thing was that, and it was kind of funny that his son, Brian Christopher, was involved too. But I loved the reveal that Jerry Lawler was going to be the special guest referee.
Yeah.
That was my favourite part of the whole pay-per-view, I think. Because it's just the whole reveal. What do you guys think about that? I know, Dave, you have no reaction, but you had to enjoy some of it.
I will enjoy that part of it. I will enjoy the fact that Jerry Lawler made a comment, because they never really directly confirmed that Brian Christopher is his son.
No.
But because of things that had happened on Raw's previous, leading up to this pay-per-view, where he had helped out too much, he made a comment that said, "I'm not going to be there to help you tonight." And then next thing you know, he's announced as a special guest referee.
It's so, like, the way they do, I actually kind of love it, because it's like, if you know, and you feel like you're part of this special group. But it's just like, oh, aren't they a handsome looking team and all this kind of stuff? And it's like, it adds so much to his heelness, because it's like, oh, you're such a you-know-what, and your son is also, so you already have this built-in hatred, But the match was very poor, to be honest with you. But and it wasn't Al Snow's fault. Al Snow can literally have a match by himself. Literally, when he had the hardcore match with the table, where he put himself through it. It's fantastic. I think this solely lies on Too Much not being there yet, as a unit. And like the ending came.
You're right.
Yeah, well, that was it. Like, it was just they weren't there.
There was no real reaction with Too Much. Like, you can look at it now, but in 1998, it wasn't really an over group. I mean, Jerry Lawler was that piece that kind of made some people interested, because, I mean, it wasn't in storyline, but, I mean, everybody knew that they were father and son.
Yeah.
And then just the finish was just one of the most bizarre and unique finishes I've ever seen in any kind of match.
But
just
people didn't
get a
hate
bottle
it.
of Head and Shoulders.
But that's the thing. Like, people didn't here's the thing, right? And this is what I love about this show. If they did that now,
Yeah.
people would lose their minds. There would be, I'm cancelling the WWE network. I'm never watching wrestling again until Monday.
Yep.
It would just it would just be this over and over again, compared to then, where people are like, you know what, that's actually pretty clever. Fair play. And it's just that weird change of mindset where because the audience had all that goodwill, they could do crazy stuff. Didn't really make sense compared to now, where they do crazy stuff that doesn't make sense and people are annoyed about it because it's like you put on a really good match and then ruined it. You know what I mean? Compared to this, which wasn't a really good match, but it was kind of saved by the bizarreness of it. It's a totally different mindset, really, in wrestling.
Yeah, it was just looking at in a storyline or a talent standpoint. It's like, how's Al Snow going to lose this match? I mean, yeah, Jerry Lawler, but then when he's just absolutely dominating this tag team, all of a sudden you see like Jerry Lawler toss something to Brian Christopher, and it's just like, and then you find out Head and Shoulders. Oh, I see what they did there.
It's so clever. It's so outside the box that you're like, that's
it was
really
definitely
clever.
outside the box.
But what I like about
cover
it,
the shoulders. There it is.
But what I like about it is the way they did it, because they both go for the pin at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And you think Al Snow won. And to be fair, the way they did it was great because the pins happened at the exact same time. So that's how Al Snow was able to keep going. He's like, look, well, he did actually kind of win the match. You know what I mean? So everything made sense, even the most ridiculous stuff, because it was thought out. They had an overall booking philosophy. Hold on. Sorry about that. Yeah, so really enjoyed it. Not a great match. Dave, I thought you'd be all about this, man.
Originally, I was actually mixing this up with the X-Pac versus Owen Hart match, which I thought was a garbage fire.
Oh, that was
I
terrible.
actually did love the gimmicks in this match.
Oh, fair. No, I don't blame you.
Sorry, Ireland, I got a little confused for a second.
I don't blame you. Yeah, the X-Pac Owen Hart match was actually, because it was longer, it was kind of worse than the Dan Severn's match. But to be fair, I really like X-Pac's music, so I'm like, okay, you know. We're hardcore into DX now. This is what I'm calling the DX segment, where you have 3 DX matches literally right after another, and you kind of, it's weird that the DX team plays so much you don't get sick of it, but they had 3 different variations of it, so you know, it was alright. But you know, China works 3 matches in a row for this too, so fair play to her. Hope she got paid
bizarre.
well. It's so bizarre. It's like, what were you doing? Were you just standing there waiting for him to come back or something? It's like, take a break.
I mean, why is Sable on the poster when China's the one that was in all the match?
That's what I thought too. That's what I thought too.
No one talked
She's
about this though.
Sorry, go on.
No one talked about the fact that China was actually speaking Spanish at the Spanish announce table.
I like
the finals. Yeah.
Oh wow.
I was like, wow. I didn't know that. I mean, I don't remember that, but just watching it again yesterday, I was like, that's pretty impressive.
But that's one thing that you brought up as well, Dave, right? So the actual like poster I know posters aren't really indicative of the show, but Sable is on it and she's in the box with Vince and she doesn't say anything, she doesn't do anything, she's just there.
She gets her butt slapped, which would not hold up to current situations, and then she turns around and slap. Yeah, it's Patterson, right? She turns around and slaps Patterson. So I thought the moment was funny, and I also went, they could never do this nowadays.
They can never do it. They can never do it in today's society.
They can never do it in today's society. It's just not a thing that could happen, you know?
I mean, I personally want to see the Kiss My Ass Club return as well, while we're on the topic. Like, that is something I personally enjoyed.
Oh, no, I've reached my...
Don't see it during COVID.
Yeah, that's it.
And demonetized.
But yeah, okay, so look, this match was what it was. It's a shame because usually Owen Hart matches are a staple of quality, but this just wasn't it. Yeah. This was the P break, I think, because it was the only match that, while it had some heat, it was X-Pac heat, so nobody really cared. Yeah. They just wanted the match to be over. But the New Age Outlaws then had a match.
Before you jump to that, I have a question. Knowing what we know now, and what happened to X-Pac, I guess, oh my gosh, it was like 3 years ago when he went for a Bronco Buster and literally split himself open in the process.
Yep.
Does it make you cringe? Because it makes me cringe whenever I see him do the Bronco Buster back in the day.
No, not really, because he was always super flexible. You know, it was never really a problem for him to actually be able to do.
What an odd defense.
No, well, here's the thing, because the main reason why he split himself open was because he just couldn't do it anymore. You know, that was it. It was literally just he was old, and he's doing a move which you have to be relatively flexible to do, and he split his area up. It's really hard.
Well, I mean, there's a reason that AJ doesn't do the spiral tap anymore.
Literally,
he says,
same reason.
Yeah, he's like, I think the last time he did it was like 2013, if memory serves.
Yeah.
And even he himself said, I don't even remember how to do it.
Yep.
And then I saw somebody in NXT do it the other day. So I guess
like it all depends. You know, when you get older, you can't do certain things, and I suppose as a worker, there's certain things that if you build your career around them, you're going to have to kind of roll back. So look at Austin. Austin, you know, and these are totally different things, but he used to be a much more technical wrestler, and then as the injuries took on, he had to adapt and change to it. So, you know, it's just a shame that X-Pac wasn't diverse enough to be able to go, or didn't get anything else over, that's a better word, didn't get anything else over where people expected a Bronco Buster and ended up, you know, with his guts falling out of his area, you know?
Well, it's the Petey Williams syndrome. Is that his name from Team Canada? Did I get that right?
Yeah, Petey Williams. William Scott's got
where
it.
he said, you know, the Canadian Destroyer put him on the map, but at the same time, people would never get invested in his matches until they saw that move hit, because they knew these matches are not going to end unless he at least goes for it or hits the Canadian Destroyer. So it almost derailed his career there.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah, I know. I can definitely vouch what Dave said, because I actually saw Petey Williams in an independent event after he hit his TNA departure. And we thought, oh, he's going to do the Canadian Destroyer in our little independent area in Pittsburgh. He didn't do it. He lost the opening round match in the tournament.
Oh, wow.
And he didn't even do that thing. And I don't know if Chris Sabin was in that one too, but that's for a different story. I noticed that was on your background last week there, Dave. Or was it Sabin or was it Shelley? I don't know.
Well, I had one of Sabin as well, but Shelley was chilling with me last week.
Gotcha.
The same night.
All right.
Yeah, so that's basically the moral of the story. The best thing about this match was X-Pac's theme music. The next match, the New Age Outlaw.
Oh, I'm gonna just Darragh's so mad. He's looking at the clock going, stop it, Dave. But I really miss video packages where you actually got to see people's stuff.
Yeah, this is
it's not just for effects.
This is what I wanted to bring up before we got to the Austin match, because that actually is a very, very, very profound point about this. The actual presentation of the show is so much better because you know what's going on. It's not just a random video package that makes no sense. It's like, they're like, here's what happened on Raw. And then they show you what happened on Raw. Here's what happened 2 weeks ago on Raw. And you're like, all right, cool, he ran into that. So everything has a bit of weight behind it. It's not just random crap happening, pop music.
Right. But I'm even talking like the Titantron themselves. Like nowadays, it'll just come up and say, I am phenomenal, which is great for AJ's debut, but it doesn't show then clips of him doing springboard.
Oh, you missed videos.
It's not. Yeah, I mean the actual interviews. Now it's more about focusing on the lighting and the
graphics.
CFO,
the logos,
$sign theme songs that they've created.
Yeah, I missed that too. I'll be honest with you, that's one thing that I really wish they didn't do. You know, the actual, the highlight reel of stuff where you see them doing it.
Because if you're in the crowd and you see those kind of things, maybe you're not familiar with the wrestler, but you watch the Titantron, you go, oh, wow, he's associated with these people, he's had matches with these guys, and look at all the moves he can do that I might see in this match. So I think it helps you get more ingratiated with the product, actually.
I was going to say the exact same thing when you mentioned it, Dave. And it's just when you see them making their way to the ring, just see logos and signs, and are you really invested? You see that little video package of, like, for example, Steve Blackman. Yeah. Like, it was so basic, but you see him doing, like, you know, his MMA stuff, and that was exciting because I'm like, oh, this is what I'm expected to see. If Steve Blackman appeared down the ramp today, it's just like, oh, okay.
Yeah. But it's the same thing with it's the same thing with Ken Shamrock, like the most basic thing in the world. But you get so invested in it, and I think I don't know when they fully transition from it, but you know, I think the last person to really have that kind of stuff would be CM Punk. So maybe the past 5 years is when they moved away from it fully. But yeah, massive, like the whole video music thing with WWE, they need to really kind of take a step back and go, right, what are we doing? And how can we kind of go back a little bit to fix it? Because you're right, 2 ways, the presentation is a bit off. I enjoyed the new Midnight Express because they're hilarious. I always forget it's Bob Holly, and I'm like, oh my god, it's Bob Holly.
Bodacious and Bombastic, or whatever it is.
Bodacious Bart and Bombastic
Bodacious
Bob.
Bart? Yeah. Oh,
I love that. When I realized that was a Bob Holly with long hair, I loved every second of it. I mean, there was a big downside. Cornette was in their corner.
True.
But other than that,
yeah.
But this was, and I've noticed this like when I was doing a little research. This was the last pay-per-view match for that NWA invasion. That really wasn't much of anything. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Because I thought it was Unforgiven, but I think this was after Unforgiven.
Because I think in like some kind of NWA live event, the New Midnight Express dropped the titles.
Oh wow.
I don't know to who, but yeah, they had like maybe a match or two left on weekly TV, but that was it. I mean, that was the end of like the invasion that never was really for like almost a year or two.
They got absolutely just the New Age Outlaws were just so over, and not one person cared who the New Midnight Express were. Nobody cared. You're just like, yeah, we don't even know who you are. Go away.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah, but it was great. You know, it was great to see New Age Outlaws on top of their game. The match itself was pretty decent, though. To be fair,
everyone in there was fun.
Good.
I thought it was good.
And also, China as well made her second appearance. Now,
ridiculous. Wait, one thing I want to point out is whenever people make their top 10 list of great guys on the mic, you know, you're always going to have Rock and probably Austin and CM Punk and Roddy Piper, etc. But everybody always leaves off Road Dogg, and he is one of the best at getting the crowd like pepped up. I know it's basically the same thing each week, but oh my gosh, can he jive off the top of his head?
But the thing about it is, a lot of what he says couldn't get over today. No way.
But that's not.
It would be a lot of canceling.
Yeah,
a lot of canceling today.
Yeah, today. And in the same with the Godfather, like they were gimmicks of their time that just would not work today. So it's like, yeah, but it makes sense because you know it's like you're taking away a great tool that wrestlers have, and you know locking them into these confined things. It is what it is, you know. But it's why you're able to go back and really enjoy it. So yeah, moving on to the next match is the King of the Ring final. Ken Shamrock defeats The Rock with Triple H on commentary. What did you think about this match, V? Going into it, did you think it was decent? Did you?
I thought it was decent. I mean, it was kind of like when I was watching it. I mean, in 1998, the King of the Ring was still kind of a big deal,
right?
And to see like I think The Rock was at the time kind of like up and coming, but kind of like the IC champion, the People's Champion. I thought it was a decent match, but I thought it just went a little longer because both of them, it just seemed like it was like so limited between the two of them, like drop kick, spin kick, clothesline, maybe a submission hold. We did see the People's Elbow.
We did. The corporate elbow, wasn't it?
Yeah, or no, it wasn't the corporation then. It was still it was like I don't want to say Nation of Domination, but it was like the Nation.
Right.
And Owen was kind of like an associate member of that, but that was
what I liked.
I liked how quickly The Rock tapped out.
Yeah,
that was quick. Yeah, I remember it being very long, like really dragged out, but then a very quick ending. It was kind of clean in a way too.
But The Rock was a heel at this point, like a hard heel.
Are you making a pun because it was an ankle lock?
No, I wish I was. No, what I'm saying is, it's like everything he did made sense. So, you know, doing the People's Elbow made sense because people hated him, right? It's like, oh, I'm going to do this horrible move, make fun of you. But also tapping out to preserve himself. He wasn't going to fight through it. He was like, look, I can move on from this, you know? So I
think it adds realism to it. Because if you have an AMA, yeah. If we're on Reddit and we're doing an AMA, no. If you have an MMA guy who puts a hold on you, whether it's Brock Lesnar putting on the Kimura, or Ronda Rousey putting on the armbar, or Ken Shamrock putting on whatever the heck that was called, they should tap immediately. Because if they hold that for 20 seconds, your bones will snap in half. The tendons will pull apart. And we forget about that in the showiness of wrestling. And it's sometimes why MMA, I forget it. It's sometimes why UFC fans have a difficult time coming in and enjoying wrestling because they see submission holds and go, oh, well, that's nonsense. This is how you get out of that. They're not even putting pressure on the right place.
Well, I totally see that. I totally see that because recently I've been starting to pick up and watch UFC now. And because there was one fight, I think 4 weeks ago, it was just outstanding. A lot of submission, like a lot of escaping. But yeah, usually when I watch it, when I've been watching UFC, like if there's a submission hold within 10 seconds, they're done.
Yeah.
But in wrestling, like you'll see that ankle lock go for like a minute, and then they roll out and then roll back into the ankle lock again. It's like, now I see why people are like UFC or mixed martial art fans are like disassociated with watching pro wrestling because it's just not believable.
Well, it's one of the things that I remember as a kid why I hated Kurt Angle using the ankle lock, because I love Ken Shamrock, always have.
Yeah.
And his ankle lock looks so real. Kurt Angle's ankle lock never looked real. And I'm just like, oh, it always kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Like, you go back and watch it, it just never and obviously Kurt Angle's legit as he can be, but for some reason when he did the ankle lock, it just never looked good. It always looked like he was using Ken Shamrock's move wrong. So I was like, oh, it's nice to be able to go back and enjoy this period of Ken Shamrock, because you get the best work of his career from now until he leaves 1998. His feud with Steve Blackman is coming up soon. It's going to be a good time, but it's a bummer because they should have done more with him. He should have been a world champion, in my opinion.
I was going to ask you, if you don't mind me asking, do you think this was like the peak of Ken Shamrock winning the King of the Ring?
Yeah, in WWF, yeah. It shouldn't have been.
That's what I thought too.
It shouldn't have been. It's the best run that he had, and it's a shame that it never went anywhere beyond the IC belt. But we talked about this once the Radicals came in and the talent pool went up. The space for these, because you get to see this in the undercard here, like lads like Dan Severn and Too Much, they're gone.
That mustache, man, that mustache.
Yeah, but they're all gone because you don't need them. You start bringing in the real workers of WCW and stuff like that, and it just puts them away. But to wrap things up here, so we have the main event: Kane versus Stone Cold Steve Austin. So first thing on this, right? Kane comes out in a full body thing, right? Mask and everything. Austin comes out in his jocks, and I'm like, why? Listen, if I'm having a First Blood match, I'm walking out in the hockey pads and a helmet and everything. What were they thinking? Like, it just makes no sense.
Well, and I love that Kane, because usually he would leave one arm exposed, and he was like, not tonight. Tonight I'm putting both arms in full sleeves. Like,
seeing it live, like my group of friends, when I was a little bit out there, but I was still catching it a little bit. When I saw that, I'm like, Kane's being the champion. There's like no way to address that anymore.
No, I don't think there is. And I got to say, props to Paul Bearer. Like you were saying before about how we don't have really great managers anymore. I mean, there's a handful, but to see somebody who's entirely dedicated to being a manager, he thrived in this role.
And I think we may have forgot, he did kind of a promo during the event, like how he's like something about the Undertaker and Kane's going to win this. Kane's going to be a champion. I'm going to be so proud of him. And
yeah, because this was that Paul Bearer is the dad thing. So he's like, my son was going to walk out of here. And it was almost a Paul Heyman-esque promo for Brock Lesnar that he gave for Kane. Where he's talking about being he might have even said undisputed, but like saying he's going to be the WWF champion and things like that. I just thought that really hit the nail on the head for what they needed to do.
Yeah, and gosh, the match itself.
A lot of
brawling,
a lot of run-ins,
and it was. I know you hype up Russo, but man, oh man, that was like a totally vintage Russo ending to a match in itself, because it was just oh gosh, what was it? Mick Foley comes out, like you mentioned, after being pretty much near death. He's coming out, then the Undertaker comes out, then the Undertaker takes out Austin. I think Undertaker was the one that hit the chair shot that made Austin
bleed. He was
like I was going to say juice.
Hit Austin by mistake, right?
And or something like because they hit the chairs together, and then there it was, and then the referee's still on the ground. He douses him with gas. I'm like, what the heck? I don't remember.
I know. I didn't know where it was going. I knew that Kane won, but I was like, are they going to write?
And then the match just kept on going for like 4 or 5 more minutes. There was the referee still lay it out. It's like, I mean, the commentary, JR was just over the top. It was awesome. His commentary was awesome.
Well, and I loved
And
how they started pouring the fire everywhere. They started putting
Yeah.
gasoline everywhere. And as we all know, Kane's big finish to matches is that he sets the ring down then on fire. So in my head, and even when they did the intro for this match, and they had the gas cans set up around the ring post,
Yeah.
my thought was, what if Kane's pyro like makes one of those explode?
Well, see, I think a lot of that was worked. I don't think that was real gas at all.
No, I don't think so either.
You
But
know,
come on, Darragh, suspend your disbelief, man.
Well, what I did like is that what I did like is they opened up the show surrounded by gas cans. You know, it wasn't like,
yeah.
for example, like we talked about this last week, Dave, with the eye versus an eye match. You know, they should have had paramedics around the place. They should have had like an eye doctor or consultant or something. None of that.
Right,
it was just like, at least this, you're like, you know what? Maybe this could go bad. You're able to suspend your disbelief because they didn't insult your intelligence, compared to what we saw last week, which was just, this is just hokey and fake. You know? But, yeah, so some background to this, right? This match, it was part of the feud with Austin and Kane. So Undertaker became the number one contender. Kane defeated Undertaker to become the number one contender. And at Over the Edge, Austin had defended the belt against Dude Love. And then, Kane wanted to have the match as a First Blood match. Alright? And the only way, that's the way the match would end. And if Austin won, Kane would set himself on fire. Which, again, they didn't really go into. It was just kind of like, alright, we'll add to it. But they did like a whole blood thing where they opened up the match. And they, they had Austin drowned and stuff like that. It was a cool build to it, but again, like on examination, it didn't really make a hell of a lot of sense. But it was still a good time. But
It was a good, nice brawl.
Did you
brawl for a main event. Good story.
I do like
one thing that I know you're kicking us off, Darragh, but I gotta say, two things that I learned. Well, and I've kind of touched on this already, but you skip this with the Ken Shamrock match. The Rock simply is not a good wrestler. And I mean that in the most respectful way possible.
No, The Rock has never been a good wrestler.
He's never been a good wrestler.
No, he's not. He's terrible.
I think that's why I didn't like I think that's why I wasn't really totally invested in the King of the Ring final, because The Rock was subpar as a wrestler. He was charismatic. He was energetic. But as a wrestler, it was just, he was very, very limited.
He's one of the best sports entertainers of all time. That's unquestioned. But I would never put him on the Mount Rushmore of wrestling.
See, this is it, Dave. Like, is this the first time you've seen this pay-per-view? Or, like, a lot of these shows you didn't actually watch?
Yeah, this was the first time I actually saw this. I had seen the Kane-Austin match. I had seen Undertaker versus Mankind, but everything else was completely new to me.
You see, and that's the thing, it's something that people forget. It's like, The Rock is not good. The Rock was never good. But the difference was, he was charismatic. He was over. His promos were off the chain. I really like him as an actor. But it's the same problem I have with Cena. But Cena at least could go. He just didn't have to. The Rock couldn't go. But all the main matches he had, look who he was in the ring with. He was in the ring with someone who'd either half killed themselves to make him look good, Foley, or the Game, or Austin. Guys who you can't have a bad match with. So that's one thing that, going back and watching this stuff in its time, it really does kind of show up. Like, Ken Shamrock was a great wrestler, but he was an MMA guy who transitioned to be a wrestler. He wasn't a pure wrestler. And you see, actually, the match that I best compare Ken Shamrock and The Rock to is, for comparison, Kurt Angle versus The Rock a couple of years later. And you can see what The Rock could do with a professional wrestler in Kurt Angle.
That's true, because The Rock was not just in charge of his own moves. He also had to make Ken Shamrock look good. And he did. I mean, those spinning leg kicks that Shamrock threw, I loved. Yeah.
And look, it's no shade to The Rock, but he's very limited. And it's kind of a credit to him that he was able to do what he was able to do with those moveset. And again, though, here's the thing. Things being different, The Rock trying to come up now, very hard to do.
I mean, he's got the size, he's got the look, which is very important. But look, I will always cheer for anybody that can kip up. I think it's the most amazing thing in all of wrestling, and I can't do that with my body. So I love seeing it.
Yeah.
And I think the crowd does too when it's not overused.
But don't get me wrong, I since The Rock has been away from wrestling, I've actually appreciated The Rock more and more every time he's come back. And obviously, as an actor, I will always go see a Rock movie. But it's the exact same.
Except for that little Royal Rumble where he came out to try and get the fans on Roman Reigns' side.
Oh yeah, but nobody could
Yeah,
get. Yeah,
Even
nobody.
Philly booed The Rock out of the building. They're
Yeah.
like, "You're not tricking us, WWE."
It's not happening. You know,
And then The Rock just looked like in absolute disbelief when he was getting that reaction. Like,
it was literally, you know, that bit from The Simpsons where they throw all the pretzels at Whitey.
yeah,
Yeah, it was literally that. Like, I just thought that was they're throwing pretzels at The Rock and call them Rocky Whackers. I don't know, but yeah, look again. The First Blood match. What pulls me out completely is I'm like, right, Austin, we know you have jeans and a t-shirt. Why aren't you wearing them? And you know, Dave, we've talked about this in a death match that you do it for respect, but this was the death match.
No, it wasn't a death match.
One lad was covered up from head to toe. It just made no sense. It's like, no, what I did like is the fact that Austin is bleeding on his back, and they're like, oh no, he needs to really bleed, and his back is cut open. He's like, no, that's not it. It needs to be. But you can actually see when Taker comes out and hits him with the chair, you can actually see him like properly bleeding, and you're like, oh, this looks awful. Like, it really didn't do itself any favor. But as a kid, you didn't know that. But watching it now, you're like, yep, there he is. Look at him go.
Yeah, I knew it. You know, it has to happen at some point in the match.
Yeah.
So as soon as Austin gets hit with something and goes down, my eyes immediately like, "Where's the gig? Where's the gig?"
He goes down. He goes down, and the way he's doing it, his hand is moving. You're like, he is cutting. He's going to town. Like, but to be fair, no one bleeds as well as Austin, except for Triple H. But no one does anything as good as Triple H.
I know that.
So it's just like,
that's how we're ending the show.
that's how we're on the show.
Some more praise.
I thought you were going to say Ric Flair, but then I'm like, oh wait, he's a Triple H guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Ric Flair did have the ability to turn the crimson mask into a crimson headdress as well, so I think that's worth mentioning.
I mean, all Ric Flair had to do is just like pull his forehead a little bit, and
that was it.
I'm cringing. Sorry, listeners,
but
I'm cringing at this discussion.
To be fair, though, all that goodwill for Ric Flair was done when he was rolling around on the ground with Hulk Hogan in TNA in Australia. So, you know, that's another story. We might talk about that because that's.
Is there a DVD to be found of that? Because I would love to review that with you one day.
I'm pretty sure there is. If not, you can get it by other means. But if there's appetite for that, guys, let us know in the comments below, and we'll look into that. But V, we want to thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure.
It's an honor. It really is to come back and see the two of you again.
Now
virtually. I mean, we've always talked on the radio, but never like seen each other. Yeah, so
it's weird. We you know, I think we've talked about this a bunch of times, Dave. That I think we were a little bit too early, maybe like 10 years too early before the wrestling podcast boom as such. So we said, right, let's just do a video now and add some different dimensions to it, you know. But is there anything you want to plug before we let you go?
I'm just a phys ed teacher now, so there's not a whole lot to plug. I'm on Twitter at the Mr. V. That's never changed since the Teachers Lounge days. I thought about doing a couple articles in wrestling, but I mean, I have two daughters, and they're pretty much consuming my life.
Fair.
So it's few and far between. But you can follow me on at the Mr. V. I'm pretty active on Twitter. That's pretty much all that I can plug. Right. Sorry, I'm pretty boring that way.
No, it's all good. It's all good.
Not at all.
And Dave,
thank you guys.
And you like to plug?
Oh yeah, you can plug. I'm gonna do this wrong every week until I figure out this down here.
That one. That's the one.
That one. I mean, yeah. Follow at the Dave Stevens on Instagram. You can see me juggle and fun things that will also help you get away from the craziness of this world. I mean, it's my same handle on Twitter, but don't follow me on Twitter.
Yeah, don't at Dave on Twitter, except for
please.
Do at Dave on Twitter about Triple H.
I don't want you to at me about Triple H. I go on my phone and I check notifications. It's like, oh, Darragh is in conversation number 50 about Triple H this week. Fantastic. Super. Thanks, Sheriff Lone Star, for getting me into this.
What can I say? You know, I wake up, I'm like, more people have been converted to liking Triple H. It's going to happen.
It's happening to me
and that is the goal of this show. The stated goal is to make everyone appreciate Triple H. But anyway, if you guys like what we do here, please subscribe. That would help us a lot. You can click the subscribe button, click the bell, all that good stuff. We have a lot of shows pretty much every day dropping, and we're live at least twice a week here on Twitch and YouTube. And of course, you can go over to Nerd Film Media for all the shows. So for my two co-hosts, I'll see you next week, guys. Bye.